Hello, I want to start by saying that I'm glad the video I made yesterday on COT was able to help a lot of you understand better how to navigate the commitment of trader index tool and make use of it. And today I would be looking into valuation because I still got requests from some of you that I should also show you how I make use of my valuation tools and how I come up with my trade ideas using valuation. And today I'll be showing you how I was able to use the valuation tool to get my first ever payout on a prop firm account. That was a prop firm with campus fund, and what trade I took and how I was able to come up with my trade idea. So starting off, the trade that I took was on Walmart stock. Walmart incorporated the stock. So I started my analysis on the valuation because that was the only tool I used for this particular trade, because I already had the decennial pattern in my side, because expectation for 2025 from Burns yearly outlook was that 2025 was supposed to be a bullish year. So I already had that decennial pattern on my side in terms of seasonality. So the only thing I made use of was valuation. And what valuation was I looking at? I was looking at the valuation of Walmart against the interest rate, that is against the bonds. So we have valuation against dollar, we have valuation against gold, and we have valuation against the ZB1, which is the interest rate. So I'll take out the dollar and the gold and just leave the valuation on for the interest rate. And this trade was taken back in August. So this date here, valuation number is usually, period length is usually set to 13. So 13 period length is the setting on valuation. Give it some minutes for it to load. So starting with that, valuation was undervalued as of this particular point here on the interest rate, and that is short-term valuation. Remember, 13 period length is showing short-term valuation, and this was against the bonds, that is the interest, that is the bond. So just remember, this currency period length is different, and we'll still get into the currency side of things, but this was the trade that got me my first payout. So we looked at the interest rate against the bond, or the interest rate market. We looked at valuation against the interest rate, however you want to put it. So short-term valuation, we are undervalued. The senior pattern was already in my favor, so I was likely going to take that trade regardless. And if I was going to go long-term, which is going to be double of this, which is going to be 26. So checking the 26 period length, you would see that we are not below this line, but we are already below the middle line here. Let me show you that this is the middle, this is mid-range. We are already below it, getting close to this undervalued level. So that was two different set of valuation data aligning plus seasonality. And then what was my next approach? Was to time it technically, and that was what I did here by taking the trade of this cluster of this point here, and the trade hit 1 to 2, even surpassed 1 to 2 if I had held the trade long term. So that is just showing you how the valuation tool works, and this was the trade that secured me my first ever payout on campus fund. So that's how I make use of the valuation tool. But then in terms of currency, how do I now make use of the valuation tool for currencies? I'll be showing you that quickly, because there was a trade idea I had on the British pound, but I didn't really execute it because I was waiting for another technical level. And that is the thing with using fundamental analysis. You might be right fundamentally, but where it becomes difficult is when you want to time your trade technically. That is where you might face issues, because technical analysis, supply and demand, as easy and as straightforward as it may seem, is not all roses, and it doesn't just work out randomly. So to look at value, whenever we're looking at currencies, we look at the valuation against dollar, and looking at the valuation against the dollar, the short-term valuation is usually 10 ROC lengths compared to when we are looking at stocks or the indices. We look at valuation against the bond market or interest rate, whatever you want to call it. So for the British pound, I will want to take you back and show you periods where on the 10 ROC length where we were overvalued and what usually happens in the market whenever we cross this overvalued line, which is these dotted lines here. So this is when we are overvalued. This is also a point where we are overvalued here, and you'd notice a pattern. You can still call this whole cluster overvaluation. Still when we are overvalued here, still. So let's just use these different points here. So look at when we got overvalued here. You eventually see the market took a turn to the downside. That was there. This second point where this whole range we are overvalued, the market extended slightly before we eventually had a sharp decline to the downside, and we would still do that for undervalued points in the market. And then finally this most recent time when the market was overvalued short term and we saw it turn to the downside. So most times valuation is just a very, very accurate meter for you to add to your confluences to know that okay, you're taking a trade when you see the market undervalued or overvalued. Because see these 2 points that I just mapped out right now, where you see the market was undervalued just for a short period of time, because when it's below the line it is undervalued, when it's above it is overvalued. But what now happens when we are in this mid range? This is a point in time where you usually just ignore and just give the market time to get to either extremes, because that would give you a better chance of getting a higher quality entry. Does that make sense? So for valuation against currencies, remember the period length is 10 and 30. 30 is for long-term valuation, and then the other one is for short-term valuation. That is 10 is for short-term, 30 is for long-term. And depending on what you're using, whether you're using the tool by Online Trading Campus, it might not be showing period length, it might be showing you ROC length. So different, to just know that the ROC length is still equivalent to the period length. So that is just by the way. And I've used valuation, even though I wouldn't say I've successfully ever closed a trade on the currency yet to get a payout. I've not closed any trade on the currencies because I'm usually always struggling. As you know, I'm still learning. None of this is financial advice. I'm still learning and I'm documenting my trading. But what I've noticed is most times where I fall short is not either not being able to time the market properly, or then moving my stops prematurely and then eventually get stopped out. Most times I get stopped out before the full move eventually happens, which is usually painful, but I'm still learning and would see how it goes. Then just to also bring you to understand another thing, that most times I also would take a trade on long-term valuation if it's below this middle line, like periods like this where it's not necessarily below this line down here, which is this line down, this dotted line down here, because this is the middle point, right? And we are below it. Sometimes being below it is already enough for me. If you are below the middle line and the commercials are looking bullish, then I might likely take the trade, even though we are not yet in an extreme yet. I don't know if it makes sense. Even if we are not in an extreme, if other data look good and valuation is slightly undervalued, not yet in an extreme level, I likely would also take that trade. So I hope this gives you more understanding on how I make use of COT reports. That was for yesterday, and then valuation for today. Another thing, because remember we were looking at gold. So for gold, where I use valuation is when I'm looking at the crude oil, and for that it's still basically the same thing as looking at valuation with currencies, because the period length I use is 10 and 30. So I hope that makes sense to you for, because my network is lagging, so I'm not able to pull up. Okay, I'm waiting to see if I can pull up the data for crude oil. So the yellow is usually the color for valuation on crude oil, and then long term, remember, still remains 30 ROC length. If you want to look at short term, that's 10 ROC length, and that is for crude oil. And if you want to backtest it on your own, if you have the tools, you can go ahead and backtest this valuation too and observe which one works the best for you. But for me, this is how I make use of my valuation tool, and so far it has been able to get me payouts. Next time I'll be looking at seasonality and show you how seasonality was able to get me my second payout of campus fund. And that is basically it. I will be seeing you guys on the next one. Don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to share, and if you have more questions, feel free to ask. I'll be making more videos according to your requests and according to what you need clarity on. But that's it. This is All Stars Aligned Trading. Take care.